there, my name is Lisa Borowsky. I am, as you know, a candidate for the 9th District, U.S. House of Representatives. Thank you for inviting me tonight. I appreciate it. And I've heard a little bit about your group, and I know you're very passionate, very involved, and for that I appreciate you completely. As many of you might know, or maybe don't because it's considerably north of here, I was elected to the Scottsdale City Council 3.5 years ago, and I came to that position as a virtual unknown. I was not one to show up at council meetings, or you know, a practicing attorney and a mother of a little girl, and so I had my hands full. Because of overly restrictive, in my opinion, anti-business regulations that I saw happening in the city of Scottsdale, I decided to step up and run for council because I didn't like what I was seeing. I thought to myself, who's running this place? And so I threw my name in and jumped into the race of 11 candidates, not much different than this race. As a virtual unknown and a political no-name, I was the highest vote getter at the polls on the election day, and I'm real proud of that. And I attribute that to what I believe is the message that I got out to my community. It's time for a change. It's not business as usual. We're not going to play politics. We're not going to play special interests. Or elect someone, you know, that's not in it for ego. I'll just say it, for ego. And for the sake of being an elected official. And through that campaign, I mean, I worked tremendously hard because I was going up against people that I unseated an incumbent, very difficult to do, going up against people that had longevity in the political process in Scottsdale, and I believe I sent a message to people, and I demonstrated a willingness to think outside of the box, and in my opinion, I've maintained that disposition on the council. I am, you know, as many of you know, once you get into an elected office, people change. People get into one group or the next, or special interests, you know, cater to this group, that group. I'm proud to say that I have not moved off my mark. One of the things that they'll say about me as the council is I really don't take a lot of meetings with lobbyists. I'm proud of that. I think that I can learn the facts on my own and educate myself without being lobbied, if you will. My term on the council has proven to me that government, just like human nature, wants to grow. I have been opposed to that at every step of the way. During my first year or two, I was instrumental in reducing, outsourcing our in-house government relations department at the city of Scottsdale. We didn't need it, we haven't missed it. We downsized considerably, took down 60% of our budget in that regard. And since then I've looked for ways to really reduce bloat spending, voted in favor, fought feverishly to reduce government by making structural changes. We rejected certain ARA funds that came our way, certain handouts from the federal government because I realized that we would have to sustain that long term. I've also voted consistently against tax increases. I'm proud of that, and against pay raises across the board most recently. So I come to the table with that disposition and that tenacity, and really the fiscal side of it is my focus. That's what I lead with. That is where I'm most passionate. I think that if you don't have the money, the income, you don't spend it. You don't commit yourself, and so that's where I come from, and that's what I intend to bring to Washington, D.C. So I know you asked me to look at questions, and I have, and so I've taken some notes. You guys asked some really good questions, and I know many of you in the room are probably far more up to speed on some of these issues than I am. So I took the liberty of taking some notes. Purpose of government is not to do good for all, but merely to protect the individual liberty, in my opinion. property and equality before the law that allows for private prosperity. That was in response to what is the purpose of government? That's my opinion. What does it mean to infringe upon an unalienable right? I believe unalienable rights are those that cannot be surrendered, sold, transferred, or transferred to someone else. They are synonymous with individual rights. To infringe upon an unalienable right would be to abdicate the core role of representative government, and I am not in favor of that. Is the Constitution relevant or important today? Why, of course, it's more relevant. It's as relevant today as it ever has been. It defines us as our nation, and I'm proud of that. It is a document which frames the powers of our federal republic. In other words, it's the key purpose is one of limitation. Should the Second Amendment be modified? Should guns be registered? I absolutely believe in the Second Amendment, and I do not believe I do not favor the Justice Department's scheme to track sales of rifles and shotguns, so I'm opposed to that. Proud to say I'm a member of the NRA, and I support them completely. Is Social Security constitutional? Should it be voluntary? Well, under the spending clause of Article 1, Section 8, I believe it is constitutional. The Supreme Court, as I'm sure many of you know, in Halvorain versus Davis, decided that very issue. And even in, as a matter of precedent, I believe that if challenged, that would be upheld today. And on close question, judicial restraint, in my opinion, would suggest upholding that decision if it were. Have you heard all the same answers? Because I wasn't here, so I feel like some of them may be stale by now, right? This is a test, I know.
This is our opportunity to get to know you.
Okay.
At least you're answering.
And by answering
okay, well that's
questions,
a good sign, right? Wait, was I not supposed to?
No, you are. Keep going. You're doing good.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
I thought if you've heard this 5 times already,
different answers.
that would be really boring.
We haven't heard this version yet either.
Yeah. Your answers are different. Keep going.
Are you okay? Like I said, when I go to court, I don't write stuff down, so I usually just wing it, But I came prepared today.
Wing away.
We invoke the rule.
What's that?
We invoke the rule.
Of what?
In other words,
No lawyers.
all the other defendants are outside.
Oh, you did? No, Travis Grantham was there. Oh, gotcha. Oh, the rule and depositions. I get what you're saying. I see Travis Grantham. I'm the only one who got it. Sorry, I lost my place. Okay, can I pick and choose the ones that I like?
Yes.
Number 6.
One number 6.
I don't have them numbered. Which one is it?
Here's a sheet.
Oh.
It's numbered, they're numbered, and I think going down them, you don't have to take a long time to answer them. It's just a matter of us getting to know what your feelings are on
Yes, no, yes,
these
yes,
things.
no,
So
yeah, yes, no.
you can elaborate
Oh,
what you want
okay.
to.
Gosh, I way overstudied.
It's okay, we'll get to the questions later.
I tried to distract you. Okay, do I oppose or favor auditing the Federal Reserve System? I would say transparency is good, so yes, I would certainly always err on the side of transparency, so auditing would be perfectly appropriate.
What about a repeal?
No, I would say that I don't favor a repeal at this point, and so are we going to interject questions as we go? Is that kind of what we're
Yeah, actually, everybody, you need to let her answer these questions, and you can ask her questions when it comes to your question and answer period, please. And questions are not meant to be debates. So.
In terms of repealing I favor auditing because I favor transparency. Is the Federal Reserve System constitutional? Supreme Court precedent under the implied powers clause set forth in McCullough would definitely suggest that it is. So I'm not endorsing the use of implied powers because I think it's a much broader reading of the Constitution than I support, so. Generally, as it applies to all these questions, I would favor restoring or returning as much power as possible to the states under the 10th Amendment. I know that was a question when I walked in. I think that, you know, generally speaking, I would favor that under the 10th Amendment. There's another question associated with that one here.
This is kind of like the 5-minute dates they do, speed dating and stuff. It's just a chance.
We normally get up here and
to know
talk
each other.
loosely about stuff, so. I like the Ron Paul complete private medical option, so I think I would skip to that one. I believe the tax credit idea is a great one. Of course, lifting interstate restrictions on the purchase and opportunity to buy health insurance, I fully support. So I do like that. Would you support a complete private medical option in contrast to Obamacare? Absolutely. Under what conditions would you vote to raise the debt ceiling? Unfortunately, I think due to partisan politics, we're in a position where there might be a situation where you have to vote in favor of that, and I say that because of the obligations, you know, the loss of our credit rating. I think that's critical. One thing at the City of Scottsdale that we've maintained is our AAA bond rating because we've made hard decisions, but smart decisions. I would only vote in favor of it if there were debt and deficit reductions as part of the package. And I understand, generally speaking, we definitely do not want to be raising our debt ceiling, but I think if we're risking our credit rating and our position financially, I think we need to, that might be something I would have to do in that setting. But with complete restrictions and only with, if such a vote were coupled with, or such an increase in the debt would be coupled with a reduction in debt and deficit. I noticed you asked a lot of questions about the UN, so I guess we can switch to that a little bit. I absolutely do not support the UN at all interfering with U.S. sovereignty. I think that that's a dangerous road to go down. I believe that you know, the UN should not have control over what we're doing in the U.S. with our property, with our freedoms, and I think that's something I completely oppose. Conscription, military conscription, I like a quote I found by Ayn Rand. Of all the status violations of individual rights in a mixed economy, the military draft is the worst. It is an abrogation of rights. It negates man's fundamental right, the right to life, and establishes the fundamental principle of statism, that a man's life belongs to the state, and the state may claim it by compelling him to sacrifice in battle. And I believe that is not something that I would support at all. What?
Yeah, we're not.
I just want to see the scorecard.
You gotta beat that right there.
I should have showed up to see everyone else. I didn't know that was an option. All right. Do I support the indefinite detention of U.S. citizens as stated in subsections 1021 and 1022? I absolutely agree with the June ruling of U.S. District Judge Forrest, which, of course, as you probably know, states that the section 1021b2 violates the First and Fifth Amendments. And I don't know how far advanced you all are in this. I'm guessing you are, but I love the part when she was asked to limit her ruling just to those particular parties in the case, and she essentially, you know, just gave them a tongue lashing in response and said absolutely not until a higher court says so. This provision is stayed, so absolutely favored her ruling in that.
Would you get rid of Gitmo?
What's that?
Would you vote to get rid of Gitmo?
I'd have to research that more. I don't have a position on that I would commit to today. Do I support?
You know, this is question and answers, not debates.
Yeah, and I have to tell you honestly, you all, I know you're passionate about the subjects. I can tell you honestly, I don't come to the table knowing every answer, so you'll forgive me if I don't. Because of my training as a lawyer, I like to do my homework, and I only like to take a position when I can back it up factually.
I think that was a very fair answer.
And most times, legally, you know, that comes with the territory also. Okay, federal subsidies. Do I support federal subsidies, and how does that align with your belief in the free markets? I absolutely do not support federal subsidies. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it today. I don't think the government should be in the business of picking winners and losers. I think subsidies distort free market and reduce or retard spontaneous destruction in industries. Both things are vital to economic growth. They impose costs on many to support the few, which violates the basic principle of government, and I absolutely think that the government needs to stay out of the business of picking favored industries. This is probably a really easy one. Do I oppose or favor developing natural resources such as domestic oil reserves? How many times have you heard drill, baby, drill? Because I wasn't here. Yes, I absolutely support domestic energy production. In fact, I think it's quite the success story of the last several years. I do not feel it's the responsibility of the federal government to regulate domestic oil and gas. It should be left to the states, I believe. Domestic energy production, of course, has a win-win for all of us, both to our economy, jobs, and just the stability of our position in the world. The Patriot Act, I completely oppose the requirement or implementation of a national ID card. I just learned today, I don't know if you know, California, the driver's license that you get to replace your driver's license, it's a smart card. Do you know this?
Yeah.
First I learned of that, someone showed me that. It actually tracks your whereabouts. I think that's just super scary. And I completely, we already have a federal ID card. It's called your driver's license.
No.
But anything, I think it's going too far when it's tracking your whereabouts. No, it's not a listed question here. Genetically modified foods. This is probably a good one, right?
Bad thing.
I know you're going to say it's a bad thing. Okay, I want to have that conversation with you because I think it's protectionist on the farming industry, and I don't support protectionism on industries. I think it's the same as subsidies. So I struggled with this one a little bit because I don't think it's going to be popular in your group. But I have to tell you, when we're, I have trouble understanding why people want to advance food production. And I think that this, based on what I know, does that. We have the luxury in our country of turning down food. Many countries in the world, as you know, do not. So I think to the extent we can address a problem, hunger problem throughout the world, and it's starting with our scientific community, I think that at this point, I'm not opposed to it. I would, again, in keeping with many of these items, I would have to probably learn a lot more about that before I voted on it. So.
Excuse me, can I follow up on that? How do you feel about?
Could you ask that after we go into the questions period? Do you mind?
Sure, it's just that it's related.
Or if the question was worded in the U.S., do you support genetically modified foods in the U.S.?
I have the same answer. I really do. I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about the science and what impact it has on the food. I mean, this is, you know,
That's the question, what impact does it have?
and I can't tell you that.
We don't know.
Yeah,
That
So
actually wasn't my follow-up,
Then should
it
you
was,
vote for it?
it was,
like I said, I'd
On
have
the-
to do
on the
plenty
rule
more
of
research, talk to
copywriting
people that are
material.
much more sophisticated in that department
owning
than
the
I am.
genetic material.
What's
About
that? I'm sorry.
Can you follow up on how you feel about a company like Monsanto owning the genetic code for our food? Basically being able to sue if someone else tries to grow food. So I mean, where
I
are you
mean,
on?
there is, so you're assuming they have the patent on the code, or?
They do.
So that's the case with that, and so everyone would have the patent on their own genetic code. I think to a certain extent, you know, patents in this country have evolved very in a sophisticated manner. I mean, people go get patents, companies go get patents on many things that they produce, and that's the way that our industry has grown up. I don't think that food should be limited in terms of just basic economic market-driven forces, which means companies are researching their products and enhancing those and obtaining the appropriate patents on them. So I still have to have the same answer. I would have to have a compelling
Counter-argument.
reason, understanding of why that's a bad thing, both from a free market perspective and from a scientific perspective. Meaning, is it bad for the food? I can't, as I thought through this, I don't come up with anything how that's bad for the food. I mean, we already have such great restrictions on the food that's produced in our country. So, you know, assuming those elements are in play at the same time, these foods are going to be screened through the process, a very onerous process at times. So I think in keeping with my belief and my loyalty to free market considerations, at this point, I do not have a problem with that.
Shall we go to questions now from the group? We have about 10 minutes left of your time.
We're actually
We're down.
pretty much at the end, maybe a couple questions, maybe about
Okay.
3
I
minutes.
did have this one that U.S. senators, I know that, I'm sure you've heard the answers a lot. I mean, I really fall back on the representative government, and, you know, in terms of a repeal of the 17th Amendment. I believe that a representative government, in fact, at the city of Scottsdale, I brought forward a districting proposal initiative. I just think the more representative your government can be, meaning individual voters go out and vote for our senators, at this point I wouldn't be in favor of a repeal of the 17th Amendment. Thought that was an important one. Okay, sorry.
Thanks. So,
There's two hands.
who has questions?
Three hands.
I saw you popping up a long time ago.
Me?
No, this lady back by the door.
Well, I think this is probably one of the least important things that we're talking about, the Montecito thing, but one of the problems is that seeds are grown in families' farms for hundreds of years, and you keep all of that. One of the problems is the farm next door that went out of business and had to buy those genetically altered seeds to be able to save their farm uses that. Well, cross-pollination between bees, the wind, all of that. Those seeds travel to the neighbor's farm was no option of whatsoever. It contaminates his crop, and now he owes a percentage to the other company that genetically has that. So now you're affecting everything by that happening. How do you feel about it now that you know a little bit more about, you know, an issue that arises?
I have to be honest with you. You know, if I understood what you just said, that sounds a little more liberal than I'm willing to go on this.
It's exactly what's happened, though. It's one of the reasons why that question's on there is because Montecito actually
She's
did.
defending her position.
Whatever.
She's defending her
I think
position.
her answer is
Yeah.
that she needs to know more about it before she can tell us what she would do. And the fact is, that's an honest and square answer. I don't want someone to tell me what I want.
Yeah, I don't want to just
Yeah.
So that's
respond to variations
that
of
question. What's your question?
What's your stance on the war on drugs?
war on drugs. I don't think it's working. That's-
Legalization or no legalization? You're for the free market?
You should know.
I am for the
You
free
should know,
market.
not everybody in here shares the same opinion.
That's okay.
Everybody's diverse. so
They don't have to.
answer
Tell us
the way
what
they
you
want you
think.
to.
What I think, I've gone back and forth, I'll tell you honestly, I see merits to legalizing lower grade or less deadly drugs. I mean, look, I'm a lawyer, I told you that. I happen to also be, at times, a class action lawyer. I thought recently on these bath salts, you know, let's file a class action against every retailer selling this stuff. But that's an example of a legal drug. What we're finding ourselves in the position of happening right now, the illegal drugs, you know, they're coming in and we're running around trying to chase them. But because of these, now we'll switch to genetically modified drugs, they're legal. And they're changing the content so quickly that no one can keep up with it. I think that's our next biggest problem. Marijuana, you know, pales in comparison to what some of that stuff is doing. So,
Lisa, thank you very much. We don't want to rush you out, but we have other people.
That's okay.
And somebody has
Can
just
we
one
ask
other
the
question.
little radar question of all the candidates? That was a question that didn't make it on.
Andrea, you should have emailed it to me. You had the
I've been
chance.
in medic school the whole time.
I'll respond to that. That's
Go to
what
radar
that's
support, yes or no? That's just.
absolutely not.
All right, thank you.
That was your answer.
Your stand on the Patriot Act and the NDAA?
Oh, she said that. She was against that.
No, I didn't.
She answered it.
Thank
We'll have it on the internet, on video.